everyone, it's me, Gabby Dunn, one half of this channel. I have a podcast called Bad with Money. It's a show about finances and feelings where we don't talk down to you and we are relatable. Surely by now you've heard this intro. This week's episode is about unions, labor organizing, tech unions. We're talking to Wendy Liu, who wrote the book Abolish Silicon Valley. And then we're also going to be talking to one of my very dear friends, Cerise Castle, who covers police unions and police brutality. And she wrote an incredible series about LA Sheriff's Department gangs. That's right. You heard that right. Gangs. So anyway, here's a clip from the episode. If you like it, click below and you'll be able to hear the whole thing. Thanks so much. Bye.
So I was going to say, what were the first sort of warning signs where you were like, oh, this might actually be a bit evil to workers?
Yeah, so in 2013, I interned at Google as a software engineer. And I was, over the moon about that. I was so excited. I had always wanted to live in San Francisco, and I got to work out of the San Francisco office. And the first few things that made me realize that there's something wrong. I didn't exactly know that it might be evil to workers. I don't think I really had the word worker in my vocabulary back then. It was more that it felt like something is wrong. And I noticed this when just walking through San Francisco, walking through Soma, which is where I was living at the time, and going to the Google office, and I would pass by a lot of homeless people. And there was something about the existence of so much suffering in Google's own backyard that made me think, well, this company is so wealthy. It seems weird to see such extreme wealth amidst such extreme poverty. And also knowing that, some of the early employees at Google had been made into multi-millionaires, even billionaires. And just hearing about where they were spending their money, they were donating it to various philanthropic ventures that to me felt like they did not actually address what was important in the area where they lived. And at the same time, something that was happening at Google that I didn't really understand was the contractor system. And so at Google, there are people who are full-time employees who are, often software engineers or managers or designers who have roles that are thought of as they're valued, they're thought of as prestigious. They're the roles where, if someone says, oh, I'm working at Google, you think of that. And you associate that with getting stock options or restricted stock units in the case of Google. You associate that with great benefits, with food and whatever the perks that Google.
Parties.
That's a huge one. But then there are also all these other employees at Google who are working at Google every day and who are employed by Google, but maybe not directly. Sometimes they're employed by this outside vendor. Maybe they're employed by multiple levels of outside vendors, but they have a different colored badge. And even when I was there in 2013, there were quite a few employees who had a different colored badge. And we were reminded, as an intern, I was basically in the same ranks as the full-time employees and that I could go all the places they could go, even though I wasn't entitled to the exact same benefits because I was there for a short time. But there are all these signs saying, look at the color of someone's badge, in case they go behind you and, they're trying to tailgate you, because there are some places where people with different colored badges couldn't go for security reasons, right? And there are the other things that I didn't really understand at the time, but for example, the contractors couldn't go to company parties, and a lot of other company events are more like social events. And the way they kind of explained it was that, if we let them do these things, the IRS will fine us for classifying these people wrong. And I thought, okay, I guess that makes sense. It kind of did make sense to me at the time. But at the same time, it was hard to deny the fact that most of the people who were clearly contractors or just did not have these great employment perks, a lot of them were Black, a lot of them were Latino, a lot of them were women. And of course, the full-time employees of Google, a lot of them are male and white and have come from very different positions. And a lot of them have moved to the area, whereas the contractors are much more likely to be local. And so there are all these little things like that where it would just kind of plant a seed in my head and get me thinking, okay, sure, Google is maybe not to blame for this. It's not their fault that there is a history of, racism in this country. It's not their fault. They didn't start it. But at the same time, they are profiting from it. They're taking advantage of it, and they're not doing much to make it better. despite the fact that their mission is theoretically about making the world a better place, like all of these companies were.
Right.
And so, even when I finished my internship, I didn't really have a way to understand it or to reconcile, on the one hand, the fact that I really liked, being treated as a valued employee. I really liked how they treated me, but I also thought, well, these other people, they're not being treated very well, and I don't know what to do about it, but I don't feel good about it.
So can we talk a bit about police unions and how they work?
Yeah. So police unions are probably one of the most powerful types of unions that we have here in this country. And that's because they not only cover police, but a lot of times they also cover employees in district attorney's offices, which is kind of unusual, but that's the way it's set up. So, for example, here in Los Angeles, that's something that is used quite often for the police department, as well as the sheriff's department, to sort of dictate interpretations of the laws as they see fit. And they'll sort of use their power to, get decisions that they want to have them played out that way. There's probably a better way to say that, but I think you get the point. So for example, we just elected a progressive, quote unquote, district attorney. His name is George Gascon. And he introduced a bunch of policies that have really, really, really upset lots of people in the sheriff's department, as well as investigators that are covered by investigators in the district attorney's office that are covered by the same union. And it's led to a recall effort, along with a whole other slew of like nasty things on the internet. But the point that I'm trying to make is that because of this disagreement, what the union will do is they'll sometimes give marching orders to their members and say, hey, we don't like the way this guy is doing stuff. So how about you don't show up to court to give testimony in that case that's really important to him. And you won't go until he starts doing what we want to see done.
Well, okay, so the union, so how does it work, and why is it bizarre that the district attorney's offices are part of it?
Well, it's kind of bizarre because it's a conflict of interest, right? So the district attorney is responsible for investigating to an extent and prosecuting crimes in their respective counties. And the police department is responsible for, for the most part, what we call enforcing crime. That doesn't really always shake out that way on the street, but that's what they're supposed to be there for, right? So, for example, a lot of times that it's a conflict of interest is like what happens when a police officer does a crime, right? A lot of times the same people that are supposed to be, impartial investigators or prosecuting the crime, they have this prior relationship with the law enforcement officer. They're in the same union. They have, camaraderie in a large sense because of some of those things that I was talking about earlier. And it can lead to a lot of conflicts of interest.